I'm John Buchanan. Now, I think it's fair to say that whether we're talking about synthesizers or audio effects plugins, it does sometimes seem to be the case that there are parameters that we kind of ignore. And we ignore them either because we don't know what they do, or because we've experimented with them and they don't seem to have made much difference. And in the spirit of that, we're going niche this week, and I'm going to explain to you what the knee control does within a compressor. I'm going to try really hard not to say things like, this is a tip you need. Too late. Here are some drums. And it turns out drums with metronome. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to fire up the FabFilter Pro C3. Why am I using this compressor? We're coming to the Logic 1 shortly, I promise. What we get with the Pro C3 is a visual feedback, which I think is going to be really useful as we begin to understand what is quite a niche, not with a K on the front. I really am going to stop it now. That's it. Can I promise that? I can try. It's a niche parameter. Now the knee control is down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And to start with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of turn it all the way across to the left-hand side. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you exactly what that means. But what I'm going to say for now is that the knee control is all about the moment where an uncompressed signal becomes compressed. It's playing with how compression is applied to a sound as it goes from being uncompressed into compressed. And the first thing to say is we're going to hear the effect of the knee control much more on super dynamic sounds. So I'm talking about sounds with really fast transients and pretty fast decay times. Drums are perfect for that, which is why I'm using a drum-based example. And so confident am I that we're going to need lots of it. I'm going to put a loop around our collection of drums. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, leaving everything else alone, is I'm going to adjust the threshold so that the dynamics of this drum part are moving through the threshold and back and through it and back and through it and back. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm just going to do that now. The next thing I'm going to do is to increase the actual amount of compression so that we can really hear it. I'm going to take this up to about 6:1-ish, somewhere there. Okay, so what I've now got is the threshold set around the point where those dynamic markers are kicking in and out of forcing the compressor to do work and then to recover from it. And the next thing I'm going to do is to adjust the attack and release times. Now we're going to be returning to these dials because the knee control feels a lot like the way that attack and release behave on a sound as well. What I'm also going to do is to turn, because otherwise they're going to just pop up all the time, is I'm going to turn off the interactive hints. And what that means is very useful within the FabFilter plugins. If you hover over a parameter and you don't know what it does, then we're in a position to find out more about it. But I'll explain, and you can go back and read the sort of dials for anything if you own these plugins and you want to play with them. So what I'm going to do as well is to make the attack time really fast and the release time pretty fast as well. So what we've now got is a sound that's moving into compression from an uncompressed state. That's the first thing. What's also happening is that because we have a fast attack time, as the sound moves through the threshold point and begins to become compressed, it does that incredibly quickly. If I had a slower attack time, the sound would be allowed to continue to just as it was, and then the attack time would begin to inflict itself on the way that we wanted the compressor to behave, and compression would start. So what I'm doing is I'm deliberately going for something which is going to be super attacky, which means that the sound is going to compress fast. I told you a moment ago that the Pro C3 is very good at visual feedback, and what I'm going to do now is to show you what attack time looks like by varying it as we play it back, and you'll see the effect on the compressor. Remember, what we've got within this plugin is the amount of gain reduction, the amount of compression being applied to a sound is represented every time the compressor responds. So we're going to see dips in volume, which is the compressed signal, and we're looking for the shape of those dips depending on how the attack time is behaving. Here it comes. So why does there appear to be less compression when we increase the attack time? Well, remember, every single drum spike is loudest at the start and rapidly drops in volume through its decay phase. So if it's taking longer for the attack time to begin to inflict itself upon the compressor, it means that by the time it gets round to doing some work on each individual transient, that transient is quieter because it's further into its decay phase. I told you this is going to be a nerdy video. We're really going there. Okay, so what we've now got is the concept of how attack time behaves over a compressor. What's the title of this video? Nothing to do with attack time, but it's really important that we understand attack and release in the context of the parameter we're actually coming to, which is the knee control. Okay, so what happens with a knee control? I'm so tempted, particularly bearing in mind I'm wearing shorts, to put my knee on the desk here and explain it to you, but I'm not far enough into my yoga journey to do justice to the range of movements I would actually need. So I'm going to kind of use my wrist. Let's see how that goes. All right, so if we imagine for a moment, a sound starts quietly and gets exponentially louder. What we've effectively got is a volume point that's growing in volume, starting here and getting louder. I'm hoping this is working down the lens. It feels like I should be able to just like draw that as a line. What happens with compression is we get louder up to the threshold point, and at this point, we then decide above that how much we're going to begin to deviate how much louder a sound can get. I've run out of air. So how much does the sound deviate from its original linear increase in volume? That is determined by the threshold point. But the knee control sort of changes the behavior of exactly the moment that a sound moves through compression. I'm going to show you what I mean. By turning the knee all the way over to the left-hand side, what we're referring to is what we call a hard knee, an absolute up to the threshold point, and then a sideways movement where we get this kind of knee joint, which is where the name comes from. But if I soften the knee, that's right, I just said that. By taking the knee control all the way over to the right-hand side instead, what happens now is that the sound continues along its original line and it has a much softer effect when it gets to the threshold point. It kind of continues and then it dips and then it begins to go wherever the compression settings wants to take it. So we almost get this kind of double kick where the sound continues along its original volume axis, then the knee control kicks in, and then the compressed signal does what it does based on its attack and release times. So it's a way of just managing the relationship between the uncompressed signal and the compressed one at the threshold point. Again, I told you we were going to nerd out. Let's watch it. Now what you're looking for is these little dips here. They're just disappearing off the screen. In a moment I'm going to play some more and I'll show you what I mean. But what we've suddenly got now is a sound which is getting through the threshold point and being allowed to continue before it then says, oh no, hang on a minute, I'm supposed to be getting compressed here. So it recovers, and then what happens is we move into the compressed signal and how that's going to behave every single transient. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the knee control from hard to soft, and what we'll see is the inclusion of that kind of double dip effect, which we don't get when we're in hard knee mode like right now. Now you might be thinking it almost sounds like the drum sound is slightly saturating. That's actually a really, really good way of thinking about it. With soft knee and super fast attack, we suddenly get this much swampier, more aggressive thing, albeit we do slightly shave off the initial transient of the drum, but for kind of parallel style treatments, this is a really nice way of getting a really kind of raspy sound. So what we've looked at now is a couple of different things. We've understood the idea that the knee control controls the moment where a compressed signal takes over from an uncompressed one. So as the sound rapidly approaches the threshold point, how does it behave at that moment? Is it allowed to continue for a moment before softening, at which point we get our kind of double dip, as I've referred to it here, and we can see that, and hopefully we can hear it a little bit too. So that's how that works on drums. But coming back to Logic's compressor, where can we work with a knee control and what might it sound like on another type of instrument? Well, let's do that next. What I've done, as well as the drums, which I'm just going to mute, is to fire up the studio piano, I think using my favourite upright. Yeah, the vintage upright. Here she is. With no compression. And what I'm going to do on top of this is to put Logic's compressor. In fact, I won't put it on top. Let's get rid of the piano plugin behind it. And we're going to stay in platinum digital mode. Now, at this point, it's worth saying that a lot of sort of vintage compressors, and remember that Logic's various modes here or approaches to compression include a lot of models of classic compressors, and you'll see that down in the bottom left-hand corner where the knee control is within the platinum digital option, it vanishes for various other compressors because they don't exist in, for example, the 1176. But you will find it in the vintage VCA, even though this is kind of modelled on a G-bus and G-bus compressors don't have a knee control. And you will, oh, that's a good thing. I don't know why I'm making the sort of shruggy, what's going on there gesture, because actually in a way it gives us another flavour that we can bring to this, and we're going to find it in some of the other options as well. So the knee control is down here in the bottom left-hand corner, but I'm going to go for Logic's own compressor, the Platinum Digital, to explain what's going on here. Now, we're going to get some visual feedback. We are still going to see this double dip, but not in quite the same way that we do within the Pro C3, but you're all Logic users, so let's see how this works in here. I'm going to turn off automatic gain compensation for a moment, although actually I might break my rule about that. We're going to be compressing these signals so hard it might be beneficial for us to hear them with extra auto gain, so I'll keep that on for now. Okay, so what we're going to do to start with is we're going to come back to a hard knee approach, which is over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to make sure that I've still got relatively fast attack and fast release. What I'm going to do is to increase the ratio amount so that as the sound compresses, we hear a lot of compression, and I'm going to drop the threshold points. And now what we've got is a super compressed piano, I think. I was right about auto gain. It's too much, isn't it? But I'm going to turn it up a little bit, just not as much as that. And every time I play a new note, we can see the amount of gain reduction, and at the moment that is being controlled by the attack time and the release time. Okay, so what happens if I then put in the knee control and we come across to a soft knee approach to the same idea? There's the double dip. It drops, it recovers, and it sort of holds. And then it goes again. Which is not the same sound as this. And again with our knee control at soft. And what we can do is really extreme things if we want dropping the threshold point even more, increasing ratio even more, softening the attack time, or sorry, sharpening it up, making it even more extreme. It's a really interesting difference in that little decay moment. So remember, these settings are super extreme. I've dropped the threshold point so that the compression is happening really quickly. I've massively boosted the ratio amount, which means that we're getting a lot of compression as soon as the compression stage arrives. But we are, as a result of that, really able to hear the effect that the knee control has. Now, of course, you don't have to use it on such extreme examples. In the drum example we were looking at before, we were just playing around with all of the kind of characteristic capabilities of the way that the compressor can work as we're adjusting knee. And in particular, what's happening is we're getting that kind of saturation effect when we soften the knee off. And what we do is we sort of drop the attack time. And as a result of that, we get this much sort of swampier sound, which is really interesting. Anyway, I told you it was going to be niche, and it kind of has been, but we can hear the dramatic effect that knees can have. And it turns out we really need them.